Hey, what's up, my man? Welcome back to the Circle Club. I'm here with Pro Chef CJ, my dog, my homie. What's going on, my man?
Not much, man. Another day. How are you?
Great, great. I just this show. It's wild to me that this show has taken off the way it has. Because I remember last year, or like maybe like a year and a half ago, you and I just sitting there, and the video did pretty well and everything. But man, like this
Mhm.
show has just taken off since, and I did not expect it to pop off like this. Did you?
Oh no, not at all. I do think like anytime there's like a new kitchen show or cooking show of any kind, like if it's not trying to be like reality TV, there's
Yeah.
always like this like cult of chefs sitting here waiting, thinking if like, oh, is this gonna be real or is this gonna be like accurate or
Right.
is this just gonna be like another like dramatized version of what a kitchen really is?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah,
Exactly.
and I think like last year, going into our last recap, that was something that we kind of were like, thinking about as we were watching it. It was, like, yeah, this is a really great show, but like how accurate is it? You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, are they just kind of like diving into these guys' personalities in the kitchen, or are they trying to show like their growth or just in
The
general? But
technicality of it all, like exactly. So obviously we're talking the Bear season 2 here. So if you haven't seen the Bear, go ahead and save this video, come back. Before we hop into anything, I just wanted to tell you all that we now have a membership. You can join in $2.99. You get early access to videos, member only polls, shout outs, all that kind of thing. And then as we grow and go on, we'll have more and more things. One of the things I talked about potentially doing was curating playlists for people. So, if people are like, hey, I never know what to watch, I need something to watch, man, just hit me up. I make you a little like weekly playlist of things that you should check out, things that are going on. Like if you're like, hey, I like horror, I'll make you a little playlist for different horror things to check out, all those different types of tiers and stuff. So make sure you check that out. But go ahead, CJ. Let's hop into season 2, man. So you talked a little bit about, is this going to be more cooking? Is this more personalities? I felt like to me this season it definitely was still about cooking, but it felt more about the people behind the meals, and it felt more
mm,
about like what sort of was their drive or their purpose for becoming a chef. How did you feel about that?
yeah, I definitely agree. Like I kind of had that feeling too that coming into season two that, the seed was planted, but we
Yeah.
don't like truly know what these people are going to be capable of in a
Mm-hmm.
completely different like setting.
Right.
A lot of like home cooks and like mom and pop, they've all been there for an extended amount of time, and now you have something. Okay, well, if you guys want to really do this at the level that Carmy was coming into, things got to change.
Right.
And I think what's interesting about it is that it didn't really come from Carmy, this kind of change.
Mm.
He wasn't the one saying like, I need you guys to be at this level.
Yeah.
Sydney was the one who was like, I want a star. Okay,
Yes.
well, if you want a star, this is what's gonna have to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
And
if you want a star, we have to take everything up, like from presentation, from when they walk in the door, and like to me, what I thought was really cool was it in my opinion, like when you're a great at something, basketball, painting, singing, whatever, there's like a level of desperation behind that greatness, like it's almost like you have to do this thing or you can't survive, you have to do this thing or you can't fall asleep at night, right? And to
Mhm.
me, I thought like them setting up season 1 where it's just a bunch of people who are trying to work, get a job, pay their bills. That was sort of like the mindset. So you didn't really think that these people were as passionate as they were, right? And then so they set up where the shop gets shut down. They don't pass all these they don't pass all the inspection, and then there's this sort of like, hey, we have to rebuild this thing from the ground up anyways, who do we want to be? What's our identity? And that sort of paralleled the what they were all going through in their personal lives as well. But you hit the nail on the coffin, like the fact that it wasn't Carmy, and it was Sydney, and it was Ebro, and some of these other folks going out of their way to do it. I think it was because they had this mindset of, if we don't elevate, if we don't step up, we're not going to have jobs. This isn't going to survive, you know? And so that level of desperation, I thought they did a really good job with that, and even showing some resistance. Like, you know, Cousin at first really was kind of like, oh man, this is kind of bullshit. You guys are trying to switch things up that have always worked. Ebro was kind of like, I mean, I've been cooking my whole life. Like, now you got me chopping. Like, what is this? And there was some resistance, but then you sort of saw others like, from, I can never remember his name, from Odd Future. Marcus, yes, when he goes over to like Denmark or whatever, like, you know, he really embraces that too. So I really like that element of this season too.
Yeah, and like you said, like, you know, for example, like how they are in the second season is like a representation of like their outside of the kitchen lives.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I definitely think, especially with like Cousin, with that, you know, I think something that like clicked with him in the show was when he's outside. Yeah, when he gets taken outside and he's like, why are you guys like this?
Yeah.
When he's staging at the Matheson.
Yeah.
And he's like, why are you guys? He's like, because I fucking love this. Yeah. This is everything for me. And he's like, oh, I've heard that before. Like,
yeah. Exactly. He's like, oh yeah. It's kind of like he had this like, oh, you're all on this like high horse sort of pretentious thing, but like him really seeing like how you can change someone's day, lives, whatever, with that experience, it like really hit home with him. And I'm curious, you being a professional chef yourself, like, is that sort of the motivation that you see with a lot of people, or do you think it's just a check? Like, what's your motivation behind being a chef?
Well, I'd say like the motivation that goes into it is what sets apart taking like the extra step or just doing what is enough to meet the guest's standards. You know, like in Cousins, like for Cousin example is, you know, he was so used to just meeting what the bare standard was, but now he's learning how to, you know, exceed that expectation, and that's kind of like what all, you know, creating that experience is all about. And you know, going above and beyond.
And how often does something like that happen, where a character like Marcus can go in and sort of guest appear at another restaurant and maybe learn under someone else? Like, is that something that happens if you have like a network? Is that something like, you know, there's like a Facebook of chefs where you guys are talking? Like, how does that work?
Well, it's a couple different ways it can happen. I think the last episode we talked about, it's called staging. Yeah. And you know, that is something that happens very, very regularly. And if, you know what I mean, like all the time, there are people in my kitchen that come in and stage. You know, I have done something that is quite similar to what they do in the show, whereas I didn't leave my main job. I had no intention of leaving where I was staying, but I went and staged somewhere else to go and see what they were doing, and like, you know, you learn something. You know, each chef is not completely different. They have the kind of same fundamentals that like you, in order to be like successful. But every chef and every cook has a little different techniques that they do certain things, and you know, for him to be staging at a place that is so high end and focuses so much on standard and consistency, and it's you need to be really skillful in order to do that kind of thing. You know, that's quite the jump. You know, it's not necessary that like that would be as common. But it's not like unheard of. You know what I mean? Like,
that makes sense. Because I wondered that. I was like, I mean, it was cool how obviously Luca, Will Poulter's character this season, him and Carmy had some relationship. We saw that they worked together at that restaurant because there was like the photo of them together and stuff. So I was like, oh, that's probably his boy, you know, like they're probably homies or whatever. So, you know, he allowed him to work under that. But I was like, would something like that really happen, or is that more fictional? So I thought
you definitely use your chef's connections in order to like see what else is out there.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's to like, you know, find your next job, or it's just like, hey chef, you know, I know that you have a good relationship with the people at this restaurant.
Yeah.
Would I be stepping on your toes if I went and like checked it out, kind of deal?
Makes sense. So pretty much like you're saying, like it's cool if a chef is like, hey, I'm moving to Florida or whatever. Do you know anyone down there that could potentially let me stage and check this out? Is that like, that's kind of how it is?
Yeah, for sure. And if anything, that's kind of like the whole point of it, especially if you started out in a restaurant and worked your way up, kind of like, you know, I've always talked about like kitchens are kind of like a family, you know what I mean? But you come there to learn, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You come there to grow. And the better you do, the better, more of a relationship you build with that whatever chef or whoever is your mentor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're gonna want to see you succeed and want to see you like do better, and it makes you look good too as a chef. You know, I've been a part of like a chef change, and one of the first things that we had learned about this chef coming in was that, you know, he's responsible for making like 3 or 4 different guys executive chefs coming out of his kitchens. And so like, you know what I mean? Like that is telling. That is very, very telling. You can hold that with you as you go from job to job. And if you're thinking about it, like, what is a chef going to get out of like helping this student out with something else? You have no idea what that student is going to become.
Right.
And not only that, like, you know, if you know of job opportunities that are going to be a really good fit for somebody that's, you know, under your umbrella of things, it's like that's only going to make you look better.
Right. Yeah. I've always thought that like when you think of sports and artists and athletes and directors and stuff, like to me the best people or the best artists, right? These are all artists, chefs and musicians. The best artists always, it's not, their legacy isn't just about themselves. It's about what are you passing on to the next generation. And I feel like with cooking especially, that's such a big thing, right? Where it's like, you know, you're cooking in your home, you pass that around to your children, or your grandparents pass that down to you. It's such a huge part of that culture that like, I really like that this season they showed a lot of that, because I think there's also sort of this prejudice, I think, about chefs where, you know, we saw in the first season how when Carmy was working at that Michelin restaurant, how hard he was on him. He's like, you suck, you'll never be anything, blah, blah, blah. Like, and obviously that does exist too, but it was kind of nice to see this sort of contrast of like chef styles. Do you find that it's more like aggressive, sort of Gordon Ramsay-esque, or is it more like, you know, like you said, family, team first kind of thing? Or does it depend on the restaurant style?
I think the question needs to be like asked differently, because the family and team style is necessary for a successful kitchen. I've been in situations where, you know, the guy running the show is a yeller, but preaches teamwork and you know, that family. But in the heat of the moment, it's guns blazing.
Of course, yeah.
You know what I mean, like, and I've seen that. So, but what I will say now, and this is like a, you know, as I grow in my career, you know, who you want to be as a manager or a chef is more of a conversation that me and like one of my close buddies we talk about. And like we see it just from how we were coming up in the line and to now, how the culture is changing, you know. When I think the moment for me in the show relatability is like when Carmy walks out and sees his chef, he sees the guy.
Yeah.
Or hallucinates that guy
Yeah,
is
right,
there
right,
in
right.
the dining room. He's like, you know, you walk out, you see this, you're like, I don't want to be like that. You know what I mean? There was
Yeah.
no Carmy didn't go out of his way to go walk up to him or anything like that.
Yeah.
He remembered, you know what I mean? He's like, I don't want to be like that. And then what happened, you know, the pressure sits in and he comes back and he's like, yeah, maybe I don't want to be like that guy and I want to be like, do it my way and
Yeah.
different. But sometimes you can't escape the moment.
Oh, totally.
And in that sense, it definitely took over him in that, and you know, you get thrown in the cooler to cool off.
Right, exactly. I really, I'm glad that you mentioned that because I feel like that is such an important element of this season, and that Carmy has these sort of ticks or these sort of moments, and I find myself too when I'm like creating something or video, working with others, where I'm like, I try to keep my calm, try to keep my cool, but like I think when you know you have a vision about something or you want it a certain way, you just can't help but sort of like sometimes be a little bit of an asshole, right? Like you just like because you want you especially when you like work with someone that you believe in, and that's the toughest part is because like when you believe in someone and you know they're like this how great they can be in standard, you're like you're fucking bullshitting me right now. Like, you know, I want you to step it up and execute this the way that I know that you can, and that's difficult because sometimes people's personalities they don't really work that way. And what's fascinating is, you know, you had mentioned how the chef line has changed over the years for you. And I think that's also a cultural change and shift, and not in a bad sense, where it's like, I think 15, 20 years ago, especially amongst men, there's sort of this male toxicity in the kitchen, in life, whatever. Whereas, like, you know, if someone's kind of going over the line, you're not going to be like, hey, man, like, you know, you kind of, that was a bit personal, and you kind of hit me home, and that hurt my feelings. You didn't really hear stuff like that probably 15, 20 years ago. Now, you know, as people, we're in this different sort of age now where people are like, hey, listen, I want to be great too, but you got to recognize that's not how everyone communicates. And they're like, people are going to be like revolving doors at this place if you don't find a way to deal with different personalities. And I find too that like ultimately we all wish, right? We all wish that we didn't scream, and like that's ultimately the goal. You wish that you could just run in a kitchen or run a, you know, movie set or whatever and not be that way, but like as you said, it's a habit, right? Especially because if someone did it to you when you were younger, it's like you kind of have to like get rid of some of those older habits. But so I thought they did a really great job with that with Sydney this season, and I thought Sydney was really good at checking, and I really like, you know, the little tick that they do like this, the little ASL thing, or like
code word kind of like, you know, just you're getting to that point, time
yeah,
to come.
yeah,
The safe word, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Simmer down, bro.
But like definitely for sure, I can definitely understand that, and I think it's kind of like, you know, it's not even just a kitchen thing, really. You know, the kind of like attitude change. Well, I would say it like this: however you got to the point in order to that was success for you, right? However you got there, and whatever the environment is, whether you like it or not, you're gonna feed back into that. And if it's like, you know, if your chef was yelling at you constantly while you're putting up good food or whatever, and things were, that was the kind of like kick over the hill, you know what I mean? That got you over the side, or that extra, you know what I mean? But you're just gonna keep on doing that. I remember, like, there are articles out there of chefs going like, you know, I worked in a French kitchen and this is how French kitchens work, so this is why I am this way.
Right.
There is that, but you know, at the same time, in the particular, this is the first go around in the Bear. You know what I mean? This is the night that they were leading up to.
Right.
So, you know, and Carmy, everything is falling apart, and Carmy is losing his mind.
Yeah.
I have seen it where it's like, you know, it was like the 100th time you've been in this situation, and just a couple things fall through the cracks, and that's the tipping point. There are chefs that have trigger words that if you do it, or If you say it, they're just gonna obliterate you like no tomorrow. You know.
What do you, so when you say that, you mean like there are certain chefs that like maybe it's like give me an example, like something like that might like trigger someone or freak someone out, like.
So every day, so we get a prep list and specials and whatnot, and it becomes an expectation that this person is going to do this, that person is going to do that.
Yeah.
And as time goes on through the day, you need to have your specials up ready at a certain point.
Yeah.
And if you look at the chef after it's already been a conversation, after it's already been part of the game plan, and you say, I don't have time to do something.
Oh,
I can't do it. There's just no, that is just not like it. Where I come from, that's just like not, like you just can't. You can't say you don't have time or you can't do something.
Yeah.
Because in that situation, it's like, that just means that you aren't going to take the step in order to figure out how to get there.
It's like you're in a basketball sense, it's like we sub you in to run a play for you, and you're just basically like, I'm not gonna do it, or hey, I gotta defend this guy, so I can't also shoot threes. It's like this is a team, as you mentioned, and like that's interesting because like the team aspect keeps kind of coming up here, and it kind of feels like you're not doing your part. One thing I always thought was interesting about the chef culture, and I feel like they haven't quite shown it a ton, is there's a hierarchy, right? So like in order to even like start cooking, you gotta like work your way up. And so we see Cousin working at this place where he's like, he's wrapping napkins and cleaning utensils. Is that sort of how it works? Is like you would start there and work your way up, or like can you just be like, hey, I'm a chef and I want to be cooking?
It depends on who you are when you come in the door and like what your experience is. But somebody like, Cousin, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, minimal experience in fine dining.
Yeah.
Doesn't understand the hierarchy, doesn't like, has no experience doing that type of thing. So he's going to be doing that mindless work.
And do you
have a front of the house stage, which of course this is a thing that happens. I've never been a part of a front of the house stage.
Sure.
So I've never our stewards polish the silverware, which isn't normally like a task that they would be doing.
Yeah.
But like in a lot of other restaurants, front of the house has to do those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But like the napkin are very much so done by bottom of the totem pole kinds of, you know what I mean? And you do work your way up. And so I talked to a chef that I was, I just wanted some advice and like what my next step, where to go kind of thing, where to be. And something that he said to me was just like, you don't want to be, at this point in your career, you don't want to be the guy going to a Michelin star restaurant and picking parsley for 6 hours.
Makes sense.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to be, like, that's not how you learn quickly.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Which is why, like, you kind of saw a Cousin freak out about it. You know
right.
What I mean? He's like, I don't got time to do this. I need to get back.
Yeah.
My main. And,
right.
Which is why, like, for me, smaller, like, restaurants like that, like, you get more experience doing a lot of different things.
So I'm curious then, too, because in the acting world, like, you can come from, like, a local Broadway show, maybe invite a scout in, maybe send in some footage, right? And that's kind of how you get scouted into larger projects, larger agencies, whatever. How does it work with the restaurant world? Or do you, like, if you wanted to go work somewhere else, is it like you almost audition, or is it just like they put your ass on the line and then if you fuck up, they're like, yeah, you're done? How does it work?
Oh, there's definitely, I heard of a chef that has done that to somebody, but like, yeah, and it's all about, one, how desperate you are for help. Two, you'll do something called a bench test. That's what we do. in my kitchen.
Yeah.
We have like a standardized bench test, and if you do this, and depending on how you execute certain skill sets,
Yeah.
I think for us it's like you have to butcher a chicken, you have to cook it 2 different ways.
Mm.
You know, you have to concassate tomatoes, which is like you like blanch the tomato, you peel it, and then you poach it in like olive oil and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know? So there's things like that that we do, and you know, most good places, if they're really trying to like see what you can do,
Yeah.
they're gonna give you like a little bench test real quick. Most times places aren't gonna like, and also this is all part of a stage. It's still all called a stage. These are all under this whole umbrella. You know, if you do get thrown onto the line, they're probably not gonna have you touch too much food. They might have you shadow somebody.
Yeah.
And like you're gonna watch this guy, which is something I've done too. Because I mean, like, you know, if you shadow, let's say, the best cook on the line, right, when you're feeling it out, you're gonna get a pretty good idea of what the expectation is, how you need to be. You know, you want to learn from somebody who's not making any mistakes.
Right.
And if I'm their boss, that's exactly what I'm gonna want to happen too. I'm gonna want them to shadow this guy that's been doing the same thing for 10 years.
Sure. Now this may sound like a silly question, but like, how do you sort of get to the point where, you know, you could make a scrambled egg perfectly every single time? Is it just screwing up so many times that you sort of figure it out? Is it like you're working after hours? Like what sort of that, like, you know, practicing your free throws kind of thing for your world?
Well, one, you're gonna need somebody to tell you if you've done it right. It's not gonna be one of those things where you're like, oh yeah, this is good. You know what I mean? Like, if you're like coming up, I don't want to say like a nobody, but like you're not like a titled position.
Yeah, you're not that guy yet.
Yeah, I mean, like, who are you to tell me that you cooked those scrambled eggs perfectly? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And one, like, say if you're, so it'd be like 2 different sides. It was like, you know, if you're just cooking scrambled eggs to cook them,
yeah,
you know, one, again, you would just, if you're on the line, bad scrambled eggs would never be served.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say like that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you'll know. 'Cause if, like, you know, say you're working a morning position.
Sure.
And the expediter is there, and you're putting up eggs, and he's just going to sit there and be like, I'm not serving that. You know, like, what did you do to that? And then that's when somebody steps in and says, watch me cook this egg.
Yeah.
I throw it scrambled. I throw my eggs into a pan.
Yep.
Medium heat, some butter. You know, I mix it together. Don't want any burn, no color, no brown. Brown is bitter when you cook scrambled eggs.
Yep.
And you know, you don't want it too dry. But I mean, also there is the thing where everybody likes their eggs differently.
Right. Exactly. So that's what's gonna be my follow-up question is like, how does that even work? Because like, and this is something sort of in that Michelin snobby world, right? Like, I read something the other day that it was like I think there's only been 3 black people to get a Michelin star, and then within America, I think it's only 1. And so there was sort of this discussion about, you know, it's a lot of European like palate and some Asian palate as well, but like, how can you even? I know there's obviously a standard, right? You can kind of tell once you've been in it, I'm sure. But how can you sit here and say this burger is terrible compared to this burger if it's like a flavor thing per se?
It is a balance. I would say when I'm trying to make food taste really good,
yeah,
I want there to be a balance. I think eggs are probably a bad example in this, but there's
burger.
There's a book. All right, it's called Salt, Fat, Acid, and Heat. And basically, the entire book is about if you have a balance of all of these things, you will have a very well seasoned dish. which I think is really, really true.
Yeah.
That is like 100% true. It's a balance, and you're just gonna have to figure out that balance.
Mm.
You know, what does it feel like to taste something that is too salty?
Mm.
What does it feel like for something to taste like it's too acidic? You have to like train your palate to understand those things.
Yeah.
So all those really big chefs have like, they focus on training their palate so that they can standardize what their food is, so they can teach other people how to season their food correctly.
We saw a little bit of that with Sydney this season when she was going out to the different restaurants, and just because and I think it was Carmy who was suggesting, he's like, you just need to kind of get out, like go out and try and flavor. Like I've been recently doing some like creative writing stuff, and I was in a really good flow and writing all this stuff, and then I would just kind of felt like I was like, you can't go. It sounds probably insane, but like you can't go 2 or 3 days without not watching something new. Like you need to sort of like I just literally went on Crunchyroll and I was like watching some of the worst animes of all time just to like see like, okay, what didn't work here? Like why was this bad? I saw the woman who plays Tanya in The White Lotus. Jennifer Coolidge, she was talking about this. She's like, yeah, like back in the day, I used to go and watch really bad musicals just to kind of be like, okay, that's what I want to stay away from doing. Like they're over exerting themselves, they're over exaggerating themselves. So that's an interesting comparison, and that's why I say I think cooking is an art, because it really is this sort of. You're putting on a performance, but then you're sort of analyzing the performance. You're shadowing other people, so you're sort of stealing their styles a little bit, and then you're putting that style into your world, and you're creating your own character, right? Like there's all that. I wanted to ask you another question, sort of personal, on a personal note. Like, what is your sort of preference in a kitchen as far as like atmosphere? Like, because one thing I think about too is. Like for me, if I'm playing on a sports team or working with people, I like sort of intensity, and I don't know what it is. Like it's like just the pressure of everything. It's kind of like you're just like boom, 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 and then like you make diamonds, and you're like, that was a full day's work. Whereas sometimes when things are going a little bit slower, I'm like, are we gonna make diamonds today? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, so what's your preference?
For me, something I definitely preach, and I'm like, teamwork.
Yeah.
In a kitchen, I want people to feel comfortable. I want people to, leave your outside lives out at the door. You know what I mean? Don't bring if you had a shit day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Don't come into the kitchen and start spreading that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's contagious. You know what I mean? Like
100%.
And it's just like it's not the place. For me, for a long time, the kitchen was like, it still is like kind of like my escape. And so for me, I feel like locked in when the pressure comes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not worried, and I'm not focused on anything other than what I'm doing at that moment. When the pressure like does hit.
Yeah.
And so when I'm in the kitchen and like my management style, I guess, is like, I'll talk to people about if I notice somebody is off.
Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna go right up to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's up? What's going on?
Yeah.
You don't seem right today.
Yeah, what's going on?
I was like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, all right, let's talk about it. Clear your head. Cook with a clear head. You know what I mean? Because it is stressful, and
Yeah.
For me, there's no project I won't do. There's no person I won't help.
Yeah.
No one is too good to do dishes. I don't care if you're a chef or you were at a 3-star Michelin restaurant. You came to work at a place. I don't care who you are. Like the stewards need to be as much respect as any of us all. But for me, like, you want to push people in the right direction. You want to give people the tools so that they can be successful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes, 100%.
I want to make sure that people are comfortable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because people are like comfortable in their best selves that they can be, then they're gonna cook like the best selves that they can be.
100%. And I think, for me, one thing I feel too is like I mirror a lot of what you just said there too. Um, but what I like to do, I like to sort of figure out sometimes like can if I turn the heat up on you a little bit, what do you do? You know, like who do you become in that moment? Because that lets me know, okay, like if we're getting like an example of a restaurant, like if I were in a restaurant, if things are going chaotic and fast, I know I gotta move you here, and it's not in a sense of not respect thing. It's this is the position to put you in where you're gonna best serve the team, right? Whereas someone else, right. I'm like, oh, I know I can put CJ here, and he can keep getting order after order, and I can say this is shit, put it back or do it again, and you're not gonna take it personally. You're gonna be like, yeah, I kind of dropped the ball there. Let me do this again, and you're not gonna take that person. So I think that's a really big thing in any sort of teamwork is finding out where is everyone's specialty, where like, are you a camera guy, are you a lighting guy, are you a sound guy, are you on camera? Like, I think a lot of times I find too with working with people making content is a lot of people want to be in front of the camera, but they don't know actually how to be in front of the camera, and right. And they have good ideas, but it doesn't translate when they're on the camera sometimes too. So it's definitely a solid balance there. One last question I wanted to ask you, and then we can move on from TV and reality is, so we talked about this like offline, but I've found since you said this, when I'm making something that is for a group, I'm like, I started to notice over the past few months after we had that conversation, I was like, damn, yeah, I need to add a little more salt in there. I need to add a little bit more fat in there because like when you're making for yourself versus a group. So how do you learn that sort of shift then? Is it just almost like a math kind of thing where when you're making for yourself, you're like, oh, I need 5 ounces of something, and I'm making for a group, I need 10 ounces. Like, how do you make that shift? Because it feels like all of us in our regular lives, we know how to make for ourselves and our family, and it's smaller. But when you're making for a restaurant, it's so many people. So how do you learn to scale like that?
That's a pretty good question. So we just kind of base it off of like, you got to know your audience for one.
Okay.
So when you're making a menu and you got to know what kind of people, what time you're eating, like what time this particular menu is going to be served. Is it breakfast, lunch, or dinner? You know what I mean? For breakfast, it's like the standard 2 eggs a person.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's like, I think most places you go, it's like 2 eggs, 2 egg omelet.
Yep.
2 eggs you scramble.
Yep.
You get eggs Benedict. You get 2 eggs.
Yep.
Right. For like, once you let it move later in the day, it changes a little bit. Like for steaks for people,
yeah,
you can make a steak any kind of cut. People are going to buy it. You know what I mean? If you got an 8 ounce versus like a 24 ounce, obviously the price point's going to be different and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I guess like that's just a little bit of trial and error, and you have to kind of think like if you're just like the home cook, you got to know how much you eat, and you just do all of that times it by 4. You know what I mean? Like that's for like fish and stuff like that. I mean, if you're looking for something like that's like a more concrete kind of answer,
yeah,
I would do like 6 ounce portions of fish.
Yep.
10 to 12 ounce portions of steak. That's like where I would kind of like that's like the bear, like that's the right in the middle of like, who don't eat a lot. That's like the balance in between. But I mean, that's just if I'm say that you're coming over my house with like 3 other people, and I know one person doesn't eat that much.
Yeah.
I just I know them. You know what I mean? But I've eaten with all these people.
Right.
I know like I always cook too much food. It's like, I mean, I do not know how to cook for less than like an army.
That makes sense. And that's what I was gonna ask, because I was like, I feel like that shift is like it's sort of a different sort of you're taking work from home attitude where you're like this is what the portions you're making all the time, so you're like, oh shit, like I made too much. But I mean, you could always just eat leftovers, I suppose, too. So it's not really like the end of the world.
I mean, but like if you got like 100 people, you know, that you're in a restaurant, you have 100 people, you're gonna do what 6-ounce portions of salmon, say, for those 100 people. What is 6 times 100? You need 600 ounces of. Yeah, you need 600 ounces of fucking salmon.
Yeah, actually, okay.
How many salmon? Like, how much salmon is that? Like,
right,
how many
right.
Do you get out of each one?
Right,
and
right.
And that's where, like, you go down that rabbit hole.
It gets crazy, yeah. Because I actually didn't even think about that. It's like if you were, like, you know, serving a prom or, like, a governor's ball kind of thing or whatever. It's like you have, like, 100 guests. It's like, and these steaks are coming out. Like, is it you guys are literally back there making 100 steaks? Is it just like, or you're just like, this one's ready, boom, send it. All right, next one. This one's ready, send it, go. Like, it just seems chaos. It just seems chaos. That's why I'm like, it's just, you know, I'm like, what the hell?
If it's specifically, I think what you're kind of getting at is like, it's like a plated, right? It's plated, it's
yes.
not buffet style.
Yeah.
Okay. So if it's plated, what will end up happening is, you know, banquet kitchens are kind of set up a little bit differently than like
a restaurant.
A la carte kitchens because of the amount of plating space that you need.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll have your ovens all set up, like probably like right before you get ready to do all the plating and get everything set up for your first courses and stuff like that. You'll have all the prep work done ahead of time, especially in a banquet.
Yeah.
Whereas like somebody will sit next to that grill marking off 100 steaks, say, without cooking them all the way through, right? They're, you know, just marked. They got really nice grill marks, but they're all rare, say 90 degrees.
Yeah.
And internally, right? But you know that you're aiming for medium rare. So once it gets closer to time, you know, that first course leaves, everybody's done like plating it, you know, on a plating line. So if you were to take, like, I'll give you an example, like a cell phone, right? And say the cell phone is your, you know, you'll have plates all the way down this side, all the way down this side, and each person, you know, kind of lined up right here. Yeah. And you're just passing off.
Assembly line.
Grabbing the plate, putting the component onto the next person.
That's crazy.
Taking the plate, putting it onto the next one.
Insane.
And there's many different styles and like levels of food you can kind of do with that, whether it's not like more composed or it's kind of like, you know, it's a little more like casual dining. Those things are still both applied, but you know, it's an assembly line and it just requires good timing, I'd say. And you know, you got to be quick too. Right,
because people are hungry.
There's a person who sits there and their only job is to wipe the plates, make sure there's no smudges. Man. There's a person who's there who's putting lids on all the plates and organizing the plates on racks so that when the servers go and bring the food out, they don't drop everything.
See, man, oh god, like if I wasn't allergic to nuts and tree nuts and that, man, I would just be all into your world, because like it just seems like the Super Bowl every day. Like it just seems like such an intense, you got a game plan, you're going in, like then like you're actually just tasting, then like you said, people get to enjoy this thing. It's like I don't know, man, like it's, and that's why I feel like the Bear does such a good job of showing like the intensity, the family, the game plan, the execution. Sometimes you got to switch the execution up, and it's just fantastic. Now let's
food's only 20% of your job when it comes to like being a chef.
Right, exactly,
and I think
exactly.
The Bear in general has like. Did you see Carmy cook?
Exactly.
Yeah, you know what I mean. I didn't see him cook.
I was gonna mention that in the moment this season, but yeah, it's like 60%. You're like a therapist / manager / like organizer. You know, an admin person. It's crazy. But let's hop into some of these episodes and saying, what were some of your favorite episodes from this season, or any episodes that really stood out to you?
Well, one, just like in a story standpoint, I'm really glad we finally got to see the whole family all together.
Christmas.
That was like a really like touching, I think. You know what I mean? Like, you spent all this time of Carmy talking about his brother, and you see bits and pieces, and you're like, why are they bringing on this really big actor for the dead brother? Like, you know what I mean? And even though they don't get to talk about him too much. Yeah. And so that was definitely like a really good moment. There was definitely a lot of like relatability. I don't know how to not be at work in a kitchen.
Yeah.
Carmy is in there because like he's like, I have to help, and that's like how I am too.
Yes.
So for when I saw him like going like, Mom, what do you need, or what can I do to help? Do this, do that, do that. That's very relatable for me.
Oh man, 100%. Like I found that, like, you and I talked about how like some of those like you get like some of those PTSD like assembly line moments when you're watching the show. Like, to me, in the kitchen with like his mom, like that just really hit home for me too. Like, just in general, because I feel like for me, like me and my mom have a great relationship, but like growing up, there was always sort of like, I'm trying to like it's like the thing of like, you're trying to like go your own path, do things your own way, right? And like I would find my mom would be like, oh, like, like I get first place for something, and it just be like, oh, like you should have did this, like, or like, oh, why did you choose to do this, or like, oh, when you were doing this singing thing, like, why didn't you like go to the side? And it's like those like little details, and so like it just kind of sits with you sometimes, you know what I mean? And watching Carmy be in that kitchen with his mom, that felt more intense than him actually being at the Michelin restaurant, because it's kind of like, your mom has good intentions, that there's history there. Also, because that, like, you grow up with your mom cooking food the way it is, like, that sort of creates, like, your base palate, right? So it's like, this is, like, your chef, And so I thought they did a really good job there. I also thought that episode showed the dynamics of, like, how him and Fak are friends, cousin's relationship with everyone, the sister, like why she's sort of reserved and like wants this win so bad, the uncle, they had I mean, like the cast that they had this season was just crazy, dude. Like Jamie Lee Curtis's Donna was insane. Tiffany was Gillian, the sister with Gillian Jacobs. John Mulaney popped in there. They got Sarah.
I couldn't believe John Mulaney. I was like, what the heck is this guy doing in here?
Sarah Paulson, bro. Bob Odenkirk was Uncle Lee, man. Like, it's just like, dude, that like they stacked the deck that episode. I was like, I just walked out like, yeah, this is the Emmy episode, huh? Like, bro, like that was the episode they were definitely trying to get the Emmy for sure. But
yeah, dude, I definitely think like the acting this season was like,
they stepped it up.
Yeah, it was spot on.
Yeah, like, dude, there's moments where you just kind of go like, oh shoot, yeah, they're acting. You know what I mean? like Jamie Lee Curtis, bro. Like, even just the way she was dragging that cigarette, I was like, yeah, like that was real. That felt authentic. Like.
Yeah, if you take that episode where like it's the family Christmas, that whole entire episode's like premise at the end of the day was to show not only like the chaos of Carmy's family, it's just like you can tell that Carmy felt, like you said, more chaos with his family than he ever did in the kitchen.
Oh yeah, 100%, man. Like
it's funny because you remember when I was saying like before, leave that stuff at the door.
Yeah.
When you come into and it's because it's like that for a lot of people. You know what I mean? Where the kitchen becomes a safe place, and everything outside of it, you just don't know how to be how to live a normal life.
Totally.
We totally saw, Carmy doing his best to live a normal life.
Yeah, and it's also tough too because like, so much of the family works at the restaurant too, so like you can't remove that, like, and that's why it's so difficult to work with friends sometimes and work with like loved ones and all that. Like, Like I've always found like you and I, for example, like we could do anything together. Like yo, we're gonna go DJ. Yo, like if you told me to go and like work under you or sweep the floors at a restaurant, I would be 100% able to do it, or vice versa. I'm like, yo, you come shoot this thing with me. I would have full confidence because like I think you and I have sort of developed this dynamic and relationship where like we both know like just get the job done, whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like,
yeah, exactly. You got to be able to deal with some bullshit. Like, and I know
yes.
you for sure you could.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so like, but like not everyone is that way. Like, we both have friends where it's like they'd just be a little bit more sensitive. They take it a little bit more to the chest. And so like you have to sort of know who you can work with. And it seems like Cousin, Fac, and Carmy, they clearly have this relationship where they know the hierarchy, but also like, hey, you're good at this, you do that. Like I said before, right? Everyone's a specialist. The other episode I really liked too, we had mentioned a ton, was when Cousin went to work at that restaurant.
Yeah.
That was a really good episode.
That was on my numbers. Also. Yeah, for sure.
I love Olivia Colman too. So like, her being there just for like a few like moments, like it was so impactful, man. She's such a good artist, and like that was a really nice moment too. And I think it's sort of, I don't know if this is necessarily true or not, if like you find that male chefs and women chef are slightly different, but I kind of was like expecting, since she's the head chef at this 3-star restaurant, her to be like very and maybe because she knew Carmy, this was one of Carmy's close friends, she was a bit more gentle, but her just cutting or peeling, I think it was it mushrooms or
it was true. Yeah, just peeling the mushrooms.
Yeah, and him just showing him like that little detail, and him being kind of like, huh, and like taking the moment, right? Like you said earlier, chefs want to find people that like they can sort of like pass their legacy on, or teach, right, or pass on. And it kind of like, I thought that was a really solid slight little moment, and she was telling this really impactful story of her background and everything, and she didn't even get to finish it, and like you could tell she wanted to, but like she was like, oh, duty calls, right? And like I think in the beginning he kind of would have felt a little bit slighted, but he had grown so much over those, like the course of the time being there. He sort of was like, all right, like I get it, like go get him, chef, right? And I really thought like his character arc was just phenomenal. And then you see at the very final episode where he's like, no, like, or like the final 2 episodes, he's like, no, like we need to, like, it needs to be here. And it's just a very slight moment. And I'll save it for my favorite moments, but that was a really good episode to me.
I don't know, like, yeah, I was about to reveal one of my favorite moments too, but I'll hold off. But like, yeah, for sure, like, you got to be receptive to learning. You have to be receptive to critiquing and learn in order to learn, especially in the kitchen.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
100%.
That moment where he's just like peeling the mushrooms on his way out, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that was that his first day still?
No, it was his final day. I mean, he had been there for weeks, and I think he also sort of like, I think he was sort of in his head, like that day he woke up late. He didn't even show up early. I think he was sort of kind of like, damn, I wish I could stay here. I just love the way it is. Like going back to the Bear, like we don't have this culture. But I think something flipped with him when he had that conversation with Chef Terry, where it was kind of like, I can bring this back. I can change. And I think a really, really, really important thing to take from this season and learn too is that like when people want to change, whether that's your siblings, I think a really big thing with your siblings too. So I saw someone say is like, don't treat your siblings like who they were when they were 14, 15, except that they change, that they're new people, that they're adults, that they grow. And so when he walks in with this suit, they could have clowned him. They could have been like, oh, yo, look, here you are. But they were like, they accepted. He wants to change who he is. And I think that's a really important thing to take from this season is like when people want to grow, want to better themselves, the best thing you can do is be a soldier for them, be a trooper for them, a supporter. And I thought they really nailed that this season.
Yeah, I think it was really special when Cousin walked in the suit. It was like, I know how to treat people now.
Right, 100%.
I think that was the moment in when I was watching the season that like I was like, oh wow, he's really getting it.
Yeah, yeah. And when we hop into it, favorite moments. But I agree. I thought like he really took that, and also he seems like a very unserious person, but you get this sort of background with his daughter, right? And even like not really knowing the Taylor Swift, but then like at the end he knows the words to it. It's because he develops this appreciation and like he becomes less selfish and more selfless. And so him singing those Taylor Swift lyrics at the end, I thought that was a really important moment too. Because it sort of showed like, hey, I'm not gonna be a half-assed dad. I'm gonna be fully dad. And you know, people may think it's corny for me to sing these lyrics, but like when I go to that concert with my daughter, I'm gonna be all in. I'm gonna be all focused, and I think that reflects and parallels of when I get back to this restaurant, I'm all in.
Yeah, his whole character arc is like him growing as a person.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like when he has that conversation with Cicero and he's like, I need a job.
yes,
He's like, you know what I mean? Like he wants better. You know what I
right,
mean? He doesn't want to lose that. I think he knows that like Carmy's brother Mikey, like they were fuck ups growing up.
right.
You know what I mean? Like there is no more of that. And you could just kind of see that like throughout that was his like inner motivation the entire time. You know, I'm trying to be a better man.
Totally, exactly. Yeah, and I think he has a strong case for an Emmy this season because like he really did play so many different versions of himself. And you just take season one out, just this season alone, his character has such a growth, and who he is at the end, it's just like I don't know, man. I just don't know how he couldn't be one of your favorite characters because he was just so likable, so like you know you see his struggle, but also you see like man, like, and we've all been there, right? We've all been there where we're like, dude, it's just like, give me a break, you know, like, can I get a break? And he just really portrayed that so well, and like, it's like what you said in the beginning, where it's like, man, they're really acting here, huh? Like, this is acting, but it didn't feel like it. Like, you felt like you're watching reality TV or something. So yeah, he was special for sure. And that actor's name is Ebon Moss-Bachrach. So yeah, he was real special. Another moment I really liked was I definitely thought Jamie Lee Curtis's moments were awesome and special, and like I had mentioned before too, just like just wanting to like this relationship with the mother and wanting to be impressive. But there's a moment in the kitchen at during Christmas where it's kind of like they're like busting Carmy's balls a little bit, and like, oh, Carmy, you know, Michelin boy, you know, you went to college, and like that was like super relatable for me, man, because like it's just growing up, I was always sort of seen in my family as like the kid who's gonna get out. Like, you're not gonna stay in the hood, you're not gonna be there forever, because I just had this sort of drive, and like the people I surrounded myself, like yourself, man, like we all just sort of are like, man, we may start here, but this is not where we're finishing, and like we had this hustle mentality, and I think like, but at the same time, I think a lot of people don't understand that when your family's doing that, it's not necessarily that they're like not proud of you or whatever. It's like, all right, let me take you down a peg a bit. Like, relax, buddy. Like, you know, like this is a family kitchen here. You know what I mean? And I thought that was kind of nice, because I think there are moments where Carmy kind of needs to like chill out, you know, and just realize like, bro, it's life. So I really liked. I really thought that was a funny moment. I liked that moment with him and Mikey and everyone in the kitchen. And him and Cousin are they're so good together for sure.
Yeah, I think that was definitely a pretty touching moment. I think I definitely can find that pretty relatable too, but definitely not for the same reasons. It's more like the condescending, like, oh, the chef's here. Like, I've heard that more than
I'm sure.
I don't think.
I'm sure. I'm pretty sure I was gonna say me and Josh probably just like have done that like a billion times, just like Chef CJ or whoever, you know, like, and like when I was on a couple movie sets, you're like, oh, I'm superstar Tyrone, you know, it's just you gotta bust your friend's balls every once in a while, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's like even in a family, I don't even think like I'm allowed to help in my grandma's kitchen.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I have to help. There is not like I
Yeah.
walk in and a task is being handed to me.
Right.
And that, but like, I also try not to like, overstep that boundary, I guess.
Yes,
I feel
100%.
like as much as that I am like, that is what I do.
Yeah.
I think it makes people really anxious cooking for me sometimes.
Oh yeah, I'm sure, dude. I'm
Especially
sure.
in like, I would say primarily only in somebody's home.
I could not cook for you, bro. I'm telling like I feel like some of the things I cook sometimes I'm like this tastes really good, or like I know like I can cook this really well or that really like I do not think I could physically cook for you because I'll be so in my head, bro, where I'm like no, like even if you told me like yo this is actually really good, I'd be like you're fucking lying to me. Get away from me. You know what I mean? Like it's just a pressure like when you
Listen here, I would love a meal that's cooked for me, not
yeah.
from me.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
I mean, like,
you get
if
it.
you want to cook me a meal, don't hesitate. I'll just keep my opinions to myself. It
Dude,
doesn't need to be mixed with food.
let me tell you right now, I am not secure enough to cook for you. I'll tell you that right now for the internet. I will not be doing that anytime soon, man. Like, and like, I'm sure that's how they feel too, because it's just like when someone is really good at what they do or know certain things, like it's like honestly, like sometimes when someone like I'll be talking even just like movies and TV stuff with friends at like a party or hanging out, like if someone mentions to me like, oh, I watched like Gossip Girl or whatever, like sometimes people kind of look like, and I'm like, yeah, it's cool, like you can like whatever you want, like I think that's something that like people don't sometimes like, especially in like this world of movies and television and reviewing and critics and stuff. It's like people get very pretentious and snobby and like, oh, that's not real acting. Like I'll watch Marvel movies or the Superman movies or whatever because I'm just like, it's like there's a time and place for everything, right? Like you go to a carnival, you don't want a full steak at a carnival, you want a turkey leg. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
there's a time and place for everything. So I get you there, my man. Was there any other moments that really stood out to you this season that you were like, oh, yo, I love that moment?
Dude, I really loved Marcus going and staging.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty special
100%.
because when I was in culinary school and even before that, thinking about, oh, okay, yeah, like I want to be a chef.
Yeah.
And there was no part of me. I was just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go to Europe. I'm gonna go work in one of those restaurants that I've been dreaming about my whole life.
Yeah.
Granted, those things have never happened yet.
Yeah.
At this point, but so I was really almost jealous of Marcus being like, holy shit, like I would love it.
Yeah.
I would love that opportunity, even for like a weekend,
of course,
to go and just work. And like, like why would you go to this place and not vacation? I'm like, that would be vacation.
Oh yeah,
I would love it. You know what I mean? Yeah, that was pretty.
I
like how patient he was too when he was like teaching him and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying. Like I feel like we got a really healthy balance of different sort of teaching styles, cooking styles this season. Where like the previous season, it felt like there was sort of one style, and not that it was bad, but like we sort of got this. It was I can't even remember the name of the place before the bear. What was it titled? What was the restaurant name? But it felt very fast. It felt very quick, very sloppy. A lot of Carmy being like, no, do that again. Nope, this, and like a lot of like loose ends where it felt like this time everyone sort of found their purpose and path in a different way. And Marcus going out to like him being like soft spoken and quiet like that. I think people don't naturally think of that being someone in the kitchen. They think of someone who's a bit more loud and outspoken and aggressive, more leader. But like when he makes that dish and he's sort of looking for Carmy's approval, he still is like himself. He's very much still reserved, and like he's taking a lot of the things. I like that he got it wasn't a sign, but he got sent something. I can't remember what it was. From Will Poulter's character, or maybe it was Cousin who got sent something. But like, because every second counts. That was sent to Cousin, right? The sign.
Yes, because that was the sign that Cousin got that because that's what was under like the clock.
Yeah, from Chef Terry, from Olivia Colman. Yeah, and I like that too because it's like it just sort of showed their appreciation for what he did, and also to like, hey, always like it was such an impactful moment for him that like her setting that I thought it was really special. Now one thing we didn't talk a ton about, and we don't want to keep going forever here, so we'll get to that in season 3, but Carmy's relationship this season with Claire, Molly Gordon, she was in Booksmart, Good Boys, Shiva Baby. I thought she did really well this season too, and it was nice to sort of balance. I was a little nervous, I'm not gonna lie. At the beginning, I was like, all right, we're gonna get too much romance here. Is he gonna like lose his purpose and path? I honestly, I didn't think he lost himself too much, but I think he was here, and he kind of went here, and in his head, it was here, and I thought that was a really impactful way of showing, as you said, how like you just got to be focused when you get into that kitchen, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it's like you're explaining it. It's like everybody else in the kitchen was kind of growing, getting better, while Carmy was still, not completely happy in the beginning.
Yeah,
he's trying to find that work-life balance.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, he just mentally like explodes,
right.
And the place ended up running better without him.
Right. And what's interesting is even though he betters his personal life, his chef life takes a hit. And I was sitting here watching with Carly, and we were like, just like that handle when he didn't call the person, she's like, oh, I know that's gonna come back. I knew it's gonna come back, and they didn't mention it for like 2 episodes, and I was like, that would be really sloppy if they didn't bring that back. But it's possible that he did do it, and he balanced his life, and I think they could have showed it that way. But like, no, it was just perfect. It was perfect. Like him getting trapped in there and just screaming, and then just like, look at this, look at him have his little temper tantrum. You know what I mean? Like it worked.
He's trying to point fingers. He's beating himself up in that walk, and he's like, this is all my fault. Why did I let this happen? I was getting distracted. And
the funny part is I think he also, you have to have some trust in your team. He didn't have any at all. None. He was just like, oh, I'm fucked. We're done. It's over. Like, but in reality, they were operating without him the whole time. And it's like you said in the very beginning of the video, they did it on their own will. The fact that Ebro, and we didn't mention Tina, she's changed a ton.
Leveled up.
Yeah, changed a ton. But Ebro, like, not showing up, that really disappointed me. But the reality is, as we said in the beginning, not everyone's built for it. Not everyone's made for that world. And I like him. I kind of want him to be fired. I kind of wanted him to get kicked out to kind of show like, hey, we had to have people here who want to be here and people who want to grow, right? So that's the one little hiccup I would say from this season that I wish that they did a little bit better. But did you have any thoughts on Claire or Ebro or Tina at all?
I definitely, like, just for leading into next season, Tina, I love that she went to culinary school. I loved her scenes that going through culinary school. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Because, it starts like, she's like, what the hell am I doing this for? Mm-hmm. And then it's just like, oh, I really like this.
Yes.
And then she's like both feet on the ground, like running, like she's loving it now.
Yeah.
And then her becoming a sous chef, like that's like, I think that's like an incredible character development for her. And, she's a main player now.
Absolutely.
She'll be responsible for somebody else. And like, in season 3, like I really hope that, sticks around, keeps on doing that, and is like, And I honestly think will. I think next season,
Yeah.
this season was all about growth.
Yeah.
I think next season's all going to be all about having that work-life balance. Richie is now, or cousin.
Yeah.
Cousin worked on himself. First season was the chaos.
Yeah.
And you work on yourself, then you learn how to balance everything you learn.
Absolutely. And that's exactly, not to cut you off, but that's how I saw it. I was like, I love this show, but I kind of want it to be just 3 seasons, trilogy, done. Like you start from this base where we are getting to know about the world, the characters, why it doesn't work. We get, it all falls apart. Boom. The second season is you're building up this restaurant. You're building your character. You're becoming more women. You're becoming men. You're becoming disciplined. You're becoming mature, right? Now, this third season, to me, I want to see execution and work-life balance. How do you become a superstar? How do you become great? And also balance that. Because, as I said, I think there's a lot of similarities in just the art world with this, where it's like you can become so focused, so like lost. Like my previous job I was working at, I was so focused and making so much money and just so locked in that, dude. I had a like, this is the first time I even said this online or anything, but I had an appointment to look for rings with my girlfriend, and the appointment was at like 12 o'clock. And she called me at like 12:05, and she was like, "Where are you? Like, why are you not here?" And I was just like, like, if you know me, if anyone knows me, like, that is 100% not my personality. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, to like drop the ball or slip there, it kind of made me just reflect and be like, "What am I doing?" Like, you're working so that you can have a better life, so that you can live your life, right? And so I think that this third season really is going to be all about that. How do you balance those worlds?
1,000% agree. I think Carmy's going to have that realization. I would say, if I'm going to say tail end of next season, he's going to have that. He's going to have that ring, and something's going to happen, and he's going to be like, "What am I doing?" Like,
yes,
Claire. Probably the best thing that's happened to me.
100%. And you get, and the thing is like, when you get so passionate or so focused, and like when you have that work drive, it's not that like that's more important than the people around you, but you're just like you're working so, like, dude, I was paying for my parents' bills and for stuff. I was buying whatever, like I was going out with friends. So I'm like, like, yeah, like everyone's getting to do all this stuff, but it's like there are moments where it's like they don't want to do that or take those things if you can't be there, if you can't show up for events, if you, and like that's so much more important. And I think that's something that all of them will experience. I think Sydney, she's so hungry for this Michelin star that it's like, I think we're going to see her lose a little bit of herself at moments where Carmen's going to be like, Sid, this is important, but like, dude, like relax. And I think we'll see even moments where maybe Tina is like she's just like, hey, what are you doing? Or this isn't the way we do that. I know for a fact cousin, and that was the thing I didn't get to mention in the moments, is when he's doing the interviews and they have the forks the wrong way, like I thought that was such a nice little detail, because that is something that, like, me sometimes being so meticulous about little details or things, like if I'm watching someone who sends me something with an edit or it's a friend, I try, like, it's taken me years to get here, but like just to be like, great job or good job, friend, or like you don't have to critique every little thing that someone does or like detail, you know what I'm saying? Like, but it takes work to kind of get to that place, because when you care so much, you're like, it's natural, but you got to realize, like, not everyone needs to hear your opinion on everything. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's going to be a big thing.
I think, my last like prediction for next season is it's going to be about like what burnout is.
Yes.
Like, ironically, I do think like the premises of each season. Well, granted, we've only gone through 2.
Yeah.
But I think it would be really cool if like the underlying theme is something that is very relative of like what chefs are already dealing with day to day anyways. The initial chaos, the growth, and then the burnout.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
The accolades that come along. I do agree. Like if there were more than 3 seasons, I just don't know what we would be talking about.
Yes, and bringing it back to my personal, like, burnout is the word that describes what happened to me. I just burnt out, man, and like couldn't do it, and I was like, I had to move on to my next place because I just burnt myself out. And I think that when you add into that, like I had mentioned, like this is a sink or swim operation now. Like they need this place to work. So because they need this place to work, they're going to get so lost in it that it's just like, it's not sustainable. You may make a profit or whatever, but like you can't sprint forever. You have to learn how to balance, create a marathon, and create processes, right? That like you mentioned, you have some people come in every once in a while. What was the word you used? Stage. Right. Yep. And so when these people are coming in, it's because it works because you have a process already. And so I think that'll be interesting to see how they handle that, like their process and people just entering that process and expanding. Mm-hmm. I think the only possibility for season 4, is franchising. How do you take that and replicate it across the board and find someone else to come in? But I think, it's like, is that even something that you want to explore? Maybe, but I think sometimes things are just better off. Just you give them 3 season, 4 season, and then you sunset it while you're up at the top.
Yeah, I definitely, I could see that too. But even then, would that just be kind of like a redundant season at that point?
That's what I'm saying. Exactly.
I think there's going to be a lot of loss coming in the next season.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, boy. All right, well, CJ, Chef CJ, my man, thank you for coming on and talking about The Bear. This is like one of my favorite shows ever, I would say. And like, I'd put this up there with Succession and Thrones and all of that, man. Like, this is a really good one. We appreciate you coming on. Again,
I love the conversation, Great, it's great having me here.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. And again, for everyone watching, we have membership now. So if you hop in, you get early access to videos and polls and questions and all that. And we have some other tiers that are going to be coming in the future where I'll be curating playlists for people, making like schedules and things to keep you on top of what's coming out. So definitely check that out. But CJ, my man, thank you for coming on as always. And as we say here, just be you. We'll see you in the next video.